Here is your WESN News on the hour. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Elderly woman from Couva reported missing. Oil deposits still found in Tobago waters. Robbery suspect captured by bystanders. And police officer convicted of human trafficking. Now for the details. Police are searching for 74-year-old Adela Morgan, who was reported missing over the weekend in Couva. She was last seen around 1 p.m. on February 1st at her home on Heron Avenue. A relative discovered her missing hours later and reported it to police. Morgan, known to walk around the area frequently, has no serious medical conditions. She was last seen wearing a cream and white skirt, a black and white sleeveless jersey, and slippers. Anyone with information can contact Couva Police or Crime Stoppers. Nearly a year after the devastating oil spill off the Cove, Tobago authorities are still detecting oil deposits along the island's coast. The Tobago Emergency Management Agency says recent findings at Petittrou Bay may be due to natural factors. Emergency teams have deployed absorbent booms, and residents are advised to avoid the affected areas. Chief Secretary Fali Augustine met with stakeholders to review mitigation efforts. A 21-year-old man was arrested after allegedly robbing a La Brea laborer of a $4,500 gold chain in Point Fortin. The victim was accosted by two men, one armed, on February 2nd. Later, he spotted one of the suspects near Clifton Hill Beach Resort and alerted bystanders, who chased and caught him. Police recovered two chains, including the stolen item, from a nearby car. Investigations are ongoing. A San Fernando jury has found former police officer Valentine Eastman guilty of human trafficking. Eastman, 63, was convicted of harboring Colombian women for prostitution in 2013, but acquitted of rape. His co-accused, Mackenzie Hinkson, was freed after the prosecution dropped charges. Eastman remains in custody and will be sentenced on March 28th. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I'm Naomi McNish. Thanks for watching.
WESN.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Attention everyone! The Office of the Prime Minister Communications has launched a brand new WhatsApp channel designed to keep you informed and connected like never before. Get real-time updates, breaking news, and important information directly from the source. With our WhatsApp channel, you'll always know what's happening when it's happening. Joining is easy. Use your phone camera, scan this QR code, tap follow, and that's it. You're in. Be sure to tap the notification bell to never miss an update. Stay informed, stay empowered. Join the conversation with the Office of the Prime Minister Communications WhatsApp channel today.
WESN.
One of the things that I took for granted growing up was being taught how to swim. And of course, you would think, okay, not everybody has access to a pool. I don't have a pool in my house. But there were times when I had access to a pool. And if not a pool, then there's the sea. Of course, I learned how to swim in Tobago, so even if you're just limited to the sea, there are certain beaches where the water is calmer than others. It's shallower, longer than others. So with responsible parents still with you, it's safer than others. And of course, I think at some point, ironically, I realized when I was being taught to swim that, you know, they were BSing me the whole time, because that whole trick when you keep stepping back to kind of get the child to keep swimming, And then in primary school, we had clubs, so I was in the little swimming club. I did one swimming meet. I'm not necessarily a competitive person. And yeah, I just thought, we live on a twin island nation, and the islands ain't that big, and the sea is not that far. So I didn't necessarily understand how people didn't know how to swim, especially when some of these people enjoyed going to the beach. You know, they had swimsuits or swim trunks or whatever. They were my peers, boys and girls, now men and women, who didn't know how to swim. And as I got older, I understood more and more people didn't know how to swim. I get that. But I almost feel as though there's something like off. It might seem like a minor thing, but perhaps it has unknowingly larger implications that here we are in a twin island nation, and we're so concerned about all sorts of things, and yet one of the basic premises for island life would be the capacity to swim. The incapacity to swim could be the reason why some people end up drowning, because they don't want to be left out of access to the sea. And in one case, a high-profile politician may or may not have been a contributing factor to his untimely passing. It's almost like we take it for granted, especially I think those of us who can't swim. But reading what the Chief Secretary said, I am in total agreement with him. It should not be that hard. And again, what would we to do now if there was a boat cruise and there's a whole set of people partying? I won't assume that everybody on that boat could swim. What about if something goes wrong with a ferry, a freak accident, heavens forbid, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. I'm not confident that everybody on that ferry, if there's an emergency, knows how to swim. What happens if, let's just say, climate change got worse and the flooding got worse? Swimming could be, to some extent, necessary for survival. Let's say you don't like to go to the beach, you like to take hikes. I remember somebody who I know reasonably well was in a hike where the people behind her were swept away by water currents. I think they may have been near a river or crossing a river, and it was raining heavily. 2 people taken. Now, we don't know if learning how to swim would have helped them or not, but the point is, it's about the chance to succeed. But more importantly, one of the benefits of living in a twin island nation is the access to the ocean. A lot of people like to put on social media, I live where you vacation, pointing to everybody who lives up north primarily, but even technically down south as well. And by down south, I mean, you know, South America. Not all of South America is tropical, right? Although it's still close to the tropics and parts of Canada, etc. But to what extent does that unknowingly impact the quality of lives of our citizens? But it's also just a basic safety measure. So when the Chief Secretary is saying that kids need to learn how to swim from an early age, and this is low-hanging fruits, at least in Tobago, right? It might not be so easy in Trinidad. But one of the things is, depending, we have a certain number of public swimming pools, not so? There should be swimming pools that is owned by the state that potentially could be made available for primary school children to have outings that will be both fun, but also educational. If you get some basic swimming instructors, they have swimming instructors. Now, we could hire the people who are currently doing the job. I don't want to advocate anybody losing a source of income. And it doesn't have to be anything spectacular or anything deep, just enough so that if you're caught in water, you're comfortable enough not to panic. The Chief Sec was pointing to what Mia Motley said with regards to her nation's people. Same situation. I mean, it's even easier and potentially more necessary for Tobago because, again, that is both part of the life, part of the benefit of being on an island like Tobago is to have such easy access to beaches that so easily facilitate recreational swimming. It's part of the perks, it's part of the lifestyle, but also dealing with the water may, at times, it's how long can you go and kind of get away from dealing with the water, to avoid the water. And maybe it's not for everybody, and some people just don't want to learn how to swim because they themselves will never go in a pool, go in the sea, and that's fine. But I still think to some extent, basic awareness, basic teaching, so that people would have a better sense. It's not going to be perfect, but a better sense, a better comfort level, a better capacity, so that this isn't the obstacle that it is for some of our citizens now. And who knows, like I said, there may be some sort of hidden benefits that we're not seeing because there might be some hidden downsides that we're not seeing. This is low-hanging fruit. This should be relatively easy. And it shouldn't be that expensive, I think. It all depends on how it's implemented. I'm not saying we should spend an arm and a leg to get it done. But that said, while I wanted to speak about that, I also wanted to speak about the fact that while there's this whole brouhaha with the Commissioner of Police, which we'll get into later with my co-host, another police officer has been convicted by the courts for human trafficking and exploitation of young ladies from Colombia back in 2013. And to some extent, this is not the be-all and end-all, but it shows that, look, it's not as though the system is completely broken. It has its issues. But there are elements in the TTPS and in the criminal justice system that are trying to do the work. So the real question, I would argue, with regards to how our criminal justice system is being managed is not if they could do the work or not, but rather to what extent are we effectively identifying who can and is doing a good job. Who are those individuals? And how could we ensure that they get promoted and they get the proper training and the proper incentives to continue to do a good job as they make their way up the ranks? And it's not all about personal ambition, and it's not all about wanting to have a job title and wanting to have all the authority and the power. And it's not all about how you look in front of a camera. Because that, to some extent, I believe it's what's going to be perceived by the public. If not before, well then given what has been said in some of these reports in the papers with regards to the commissioner's situation, they might start to think it now. And to some extent, we already know that internal politics is just one of those things that pervades in everything that is a human organization. It could be a private entity, it could be government, it could be a non-profit organization, a religious organization, it could be a state entity, a public utility, or a service provider, or in this case, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I don't think it is a stretch to say that promotions on merit is not the actual practice, regardless of what they try to say, regardless of what the police executive tried to say, or the Police Service Commission tries to say. Because we ain't seeing enough results to be confident that merit is the basis of promotion, as opposed to seniority and a whole host of things that look fine on paper, but prove to be less than impressive in practice. But going back to the story, there are good cops, just like there are good public servants. And you could say that across the board. Doctors in the public health system, firemen, permanent secretaries, some of them, maybe. Perhaps the question is, to what extent are politicians incentivized to ensure that the hard-working, trustworthy, accountable individuals are promoted, and to what extent are they incentivized to not? Let the conspiracy theories go. I'll just say it's easier to do your nonsense if other people do doing nonsense too. Now, to what extent does that exist? I will leave that up to you. Let's move on and get to some more meatier stories with today's Daily Review. One of the things that may have been lost in the Commissioner of Police scenario is the situation that we have where Paria Fuel Trading, Paria Fuel Trading has made a deal with Petrojam Limited to buy bunker fuel for ships to the tune of 500,000 barrels marine fuel, essentially, from a refinery in Jamaica. And this is a deal that Minister Young, Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, he is saying it's a good deal. And I could see on the surface where people are kind of looking at him funny, because I guess they don't seem to understand on a basic level, how is it that we have a refinery, but we were losing money to operate our refinery, but they have a refinery and they're not losing money. Now, we tried to say that, look, their refinery is on a smaller scale. Our refinery, 500,000 barrels compared to 17 million barrels. Now, I guess he's trying to compare our purchase. I don't think 500,000 is the capacity of the refinery. Maybe, I don't believe so. Maybe I'm wrong. To the production, the importation, so just what we have to the production. Granted, yes, producing 17 million barrels is far more complex than purchasing 500,000. But, and he's saying this is a net foreign exchange earner because apparently the deal that we made, we will buy from them and then we will have it available to sell. This is, of course, assuming people come to buy, right, at the price. Not that I'm saying that it won't happen, I'm just saying it's technically not money. Given the fact that Jamaica has made greater strides in being an international port, from what I understand, compared to us, again, I wonder, why is our bunkering fuel situation so much better? The thing is, Minister Young could be absolutely right. This could be a great deal where we're buying a fuel at a certain price, we can't sell it at a certain price, we can make money off of that price while having our needs met for the supply of bunker fuel, of maritime fuel. All right, cool. But he's saying we could not have done this with our own refinery. And I don't know if it's because the amount of fuel needed would have not even scratched the surface on the capacity, 500,000 to 17 million. To what extent were we consuming our own products from our refinery? From what I understand, it's not quite that simple, right? But my point ultimately is this. They were saying the refineries operated at a loss. But I guess we've reached the point now when we have to ask exactly why. One of the callers on this show, the professor from Chagonas, he says it was at a loss because of how they were doing their accounting and what costs they were including in the equation, not necessarily the actual cash flow in and out of the refinery. But more importantly, again, to some extent, let's just go with what the government said. Was any due diligence done to determine if the refinery could have been made profitable? Because you did restructure the rest of Petrotrin. Just because you restructured didn't mean you had to stop the refinery operations. Was it that it was overstaffed? Was it that it was not managed well? Was it that the operations of it was inefficient because of how the work was being conducted? Or was it that the refinery itself was inefficient? All we are told is that it was operating at a loss, but we don't actually know why. Because you can't just take an accounting book and say, see, red. You still need to have the reason as to why it got there. So now, as much as it might be a practical thing that we are getting our bunker fuel from Jamaica, and listen, I have no shame with getting our bunker fuel from Jamaica. This could just be the reality of once we run out of natural resources, they're operating their refinery more efficiently than ours. It is what it is. To some extent, this should also potentially be a wake-up call to Trinidad and Tobago. The problem is I can't go there yet because I don't necessarily know exactly why. Not if the refinery is making a loss, but why. What is the significant reasons that you make that determination, that you say that statement, so that then we could say, all right. Because heavens forbid, am I correct in saying, well, the Jamaicans are willing to work, but Trinidadians, we're not willing to work at all. Are we that lazy? Was that why the refinery wasn't making money? We need to know. We need to be willing to take a hard look at ourselves, right, and say the inconvenient truths. But we can't do that without accurate information. And unfortunately, with the oil and gas sector, with the energy sector, it seems as though we get piecemeal information because the government is trying to prevent us from looking at things in a negative light. Meanwhile, when you tell us, oh, we're not worried about Donald Trump being elected president with regards to the Dragon deal. We're not worried about the OFAC license. Dare I ask, who outside of your base believed you? Obviously, the other party's bases ain't going to believe you. But the people in the middle, who believe that? What was the purpose of saying things like that? And it is statements like that in the energy sector, trying to basically paint it with all rainbows and sunshine, when the fact of the matter is people are looking at the practical reality of their existence on the ground, and they knew when the oil and gas sector was healthy, our lives were easier. And maybe it spoiled us, but the point is you're trying to deal with spoiled, entitled children and your mama guying them without the results to back it up. And you're borrowing money to try to maintain the lifestyle. That is usually a bad sign for a business or a family that's slowly in decline. So I get it, this deal on the surface might be a good deal, but how did we get here? And it's no knock on Jamaicans. It's not to say we shouldn't be, that's just Jamaica. They be lost. No, it's not that they're beneath us. It's that we had a capacity and a capability. And we should not have needed to outsource it without a proper explanation. And without that, it's very hard to take what you say on this matter seriously. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome my co-host And then we'll get to the big story, the unavoidable juggernaut, 200-pound elephant in the room. That is to say, this whole commissioner of police, at this point, I'm willing to say, debacle, fiasco, with how it's being handled, at the very least how it's being presented. We'll talk about that and more when we come back. Stay tuned.
SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands, and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Transform your home with PCU Plus. From stylish furniture to the latest appliances, we have everything you need to create your perfect space. At PCU Plus, we offer fair prices and affordable financing options that are cheaper than hire purchase agreements. With convenient locations in San Fernando, Tobago, Arima, and our lifestyle showroom in Barataria, you're never far from the best deals. Visit PCU Plus today and discover why we're the top choice for quality furniture and appliances. PCU Plus, quality you trust, prices you'll love. Visit one of our locations or find us online to start transforming your home today.
Well, the situation with the commissioner has taken significant turns since we last spoke to my co-host. Yes, he's technically still the co-host of Talking Point, the Shah of WASN, Mr. Shah.
Good morning, Sean. I hope you're doing well, and a lot of turns and twists in this saga, but to sum it up in a brief statement, it's a complete and utter mess.
I mean, there are a lot of things I would like to say. Some of them are acronyms, which might be too well known for me to say, so I'm even hesitant to say that. But yes, given what I don't know if how well you remembered where we left off, but essentially, the question was up in the air with regards to what happened to Erla next, because all we got was that she was arrested and was being questioned. The fact that she was officially going to be suspended or fired, right, that only came out after last week Friday, so we didn't necessarily get your response to that. And I guess the first thing I have to ask, and this might be the obvious thing, Pamela Elder basically came out when she was released and said they have no evidence. So I want to ask you, I already kind of said my opinion on this part of it, but given they have no evidence, what do you make of the fact that the Police Service Commission decided to suspend the commissioner? And I do believe that they may have sent that letter on the 31st, so that may have been before she was released, before Pamela said no evidence, before the DPP advised that she be released. But it seems as though today they have indicated that no, that suspension is going through. What do you make of it?
Coming back to what you said at the beginning, it's a complete and utter mess, and there are a couple of things. Referring to what was said during our conversation last week, Friday, I indicated there are many ways that you can interpret this. You can say, okay, great, the TTPS is working and they're not afraid to go up to their own. Or I can say, as I said, it could also be a complete mess, and even referred to the issue in respect to the merit list that took place 2 or 3 years ago. Putting that aside for the moment, from the developments since we had that conversation, it's just quite comical to me as per how messed up a situation can get in TNT, and there are very little repercussions for those involved. For example, in this particular instance, the question I'm asking this morning is, where is Suzette Martin, for example? Suzette Martin has a lot of questions to answer. She was the individual, according to reports, whom as Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge with investigations and intelligence, she's the one that arrested earlier with Christopher. And one of the questions I asked last week, which still stands, is who would have advised her to have done such? Because she's the individual, Deputy Commissioner of Police is the only one who can arrest a Commissioner of Police. But would Early Edward Christopher have been advised previously? Would she have been asked to come in for questioning previously? She would have been aware of the investigation, but probably would have stayed clear of it. I'm assuming, but would she have been asked to come into question previously before being arrested? And the mere fact that the Police Service Commission acted so quickly, you have to say, well, wow, it's incredible. They have to be one of the most efficient institutions or independent institutions that exist. And I mean that facetiously, because last week, Friday morning, we had a conversation asking the question as to whether or not Ula Edward Christopher could continue to act in that position while she was arrested, while she was detained. And clearly the answer was not the case. She couldn't do that. At the same time, she has brought the office, the integrity of the office has always been questionable, and I am no particular fan of Ula Edward Christopher as the Commissioner of Police. But this is where I said innocent until proven guilty, and I stressed on that point. And if an individual has been detained for 48 hours with question, and there was not 1 ounce of evidence, and that is what Pamela Ellis said, there was clearly no evidence, and this is what the DPP said, there was clearly no evidence. Where did the directive or where did the advice come from to arrest Ula Edward Christopher? Did Susan Martin do it on her own accord? What intelligence or evidence led to that happening? And clearly there was nothing. The DPP said, she said, get out of my office. That's essentially what the DPP said. What are you wasting my time for here? There's nothing that can be done. Then, looking at what Pamela Elder speaking to the press on behalf of her client, and I think Mark Bassant asked the question as per whether or not Ula Edward Christopher thought she could have trusted her colleagues and her confidence around her deputy commissioners of police, something along the lines of trust. Earlier, with Christopher was advised not to respond to any questions, but her facial expression said it all. Her facial expression, if anybody followed that at all, you would have seen earlier with Christopher's, she responded with her facial reaction. Sean, did you by chance get the opportunity to watch the press conference yesterday that was led by DCP Benjamin?
I saw a piece of it. I wanted to ask you about it with regards to the fact that he was asked, well, who authorized this situation? And he avoided all questions, and to some extent, I don't know if he redirected all of them to DCP Martin. And I think his actions alone raises a lot of questions, not saying that he is culpable of anything, but he is not necessarily getting the benefit of the doubt, right? Meanwhile, of course, the fact that he now seemingly is front and center, and DCP Martin, was she even there for the press conference? That's the one thing, because I didn't see the whole thing. That's the one thing that I'm not aware of. I just find it's interesting that she led the first one where she, announced the arrest, and now that everything's fallen apart, she's not been present in the public sphere to continue updating us with what's going on.
Well, this is the thing. So I'm asking, where is Suzette Martin? Because the questions really needed to be directed to her. Now, DCP Benjamin deflected, and I'll be quite honest with you, I can't blame him entirely, because our colleague in the media, Keisha Nathan's, asked him directly about confidence within his own colleague of Suzette Martin, and he deflected. I mean, it's unfortunate. He kind of made himself look a bit weak there. If he is now to be the acting commissioner of police, because as of this morning, I don't know who is leading the police service in Transylvania. Earlier, Christopher was asked to not report for duty, but as far as I'm aware, she is still commissioner of police, right? There's a report saying that she has been fired. I don't know how genuine that is.
No, I think it's suspended.
What I'm trying to get at is that for Suzette Martin, the questions are, if, according to the DPP, there was no reasonable grounds to charge the individual, if nobody wanted to sign off on being as being the complainant, or if Pamela Elder saying there was no evidence at all, then on what grounds did you arrest an individual in the first place?
Your superior.
Clearly, there was. On what grounds did you arrest them in the first place? You're not going to arrest them just to say that, for question. I want to know more so about the intelligence gathering, and I don't understand. You're being brought in for questioning, but then at the same time, we said it. It's going to be difficult for Earl with Christopher to come back from this, and that's why I'm wondering. Was this just a ploy to remove her from office? The individual who is supposed to be answering all these questions, not about a ploy. I'm not asking her about a ploy, but I'm stressing, where is Suzette Martin? That is the individual who has a lot of questions to answer. Again, if there was no evidence, I'm saying there was no reasonable grounds. And this is why, at this point, though I'm not a fan of Earlier with Christopher as Commissioner of Police, I've said it and I repeat myself, innocent until proven guilty, and I in no way can blame her or her attorneys that are representing and that are acting on behalf of her this morning, demanding that suspension letter be rescinded and that she report back for duty. I can't blame her at all for that, because clearly this entire thing is messed up, and it's quite unfortunate to say the least. 8% confidence in the TTPS, 8% trust in the TTPS. We're probably down to 0 as we speak this morning.
And we'll get to what officers in the TTPS make of this situation, because I think they actually are responding along a similar line or perspective as most of the citizens. But one of the things that I wanted to point out, Keaton, is they essentially, Police Service Commission, it technically was yesterday, the report I believe is in today's papers. They're saying that the suspension is going through because she's under investigation. But my question to that is basically, cool, what is she being investigated for? Because given how the Act, the Firearms Act is written, unless there's a more updated version that I did not find, I got it from the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs website, sniper rifles are not prohibited weapons. So to what extent did the Commissioner of Police break the law when she approved of FULs for non-prohibited weapons to an entity within the national security apparatus, right? And we don't necessarily know who made that request of her. But to what law did she actually break? Because while I understand that it might have been improper for the SSA to have sniper rifles, to say that you're going to arrest and charge the commissioner, she had to have broken a law. And it seems as though they don't actually have a law. What is the charge? What is she accused of in this investigation? We have not been told, right? All that we know is a set of stuff that we're speculating on that still can't point to any actual law being broken on behalf of the Commissioner of Police. So I would like to understand exactly what are the grounds that the Police Service Commission have to stand on this decision, because I'll say this, Keaton, there are practical reasons why it might make sense to suspend earlier with Christopher for the rest of her term, but I don't think any of those practical reasons are legally justifiable or could make this situation reasonable. I think, as much as you might want to consider them, it's not reasonable, and I don't think it's potentially, it might not be legal. I don't know what you'll say to that.
Again, I think these are things. It's very important what you're saying. It's not that we're defending earlier with Christopher, and it's not that we are against the Police Service Commission acting, because I'm not going to go against what I said last week in relation to the Police Service Commission acting. I am simply saying, and I'm agreeing with you, exactly what grounds is there for this suspension now at this point. Saying that it's because an individual is being actively investigated that they are being removed from office. Again, I've said it in the past. There is nothing wrong with removing an individual from active duty if they are being actively investigated. What I can't understand is that is it that earlier with Christopher is still being investigated? That's what I'm trying to figure out. This is where the confusion of the action of the Police Service Commission and myself, and this entire case, this is where I get confused. Is she still being investigated following her being released on without any charge and without any grounds of evidence? That is where I'm confused, because I'll give you an example. When David Lee I think David Lee was charged for the sale of a vehicle and whatnot, we had an entire debate about it, about these individuals acting in or being in office or continuing their role. And we keep coming back to that point about innocent until proven guilty. But this entire thing is confusing to me because, again, I think it was stated that there was a warrant that was issued for Earl Edward Christopher's arrest as well. What grounds was that warrant granted? Who granted that warrant? Obviously, it has to be a judge. I'm not silly. I'm just asking exactly which judge would have granted it on what grounds. Was Earl Edward, I keep coming back to this point, was she actually asked to come in for questioning or asked to come in with a lawyer for whatever the case may be, rather than this whole fiasco happening? This is what I'm saying. When people are asking questions, that it just seems to be an internal coup, a ploy to get rid of Edward Christopher from her position, from her seat. The only body that is able to do that is the Police Service Commission. They're the only ones that have the power and authority to do it. But again, we're dealing with some controversial figures. And in the case of DCP Benjamin this morning, could he trust his colleagues? If he is going to be acting Commissioner of Police, could he trust his colleagues? Could he actually sit down and say that the individuals around me, including Suzette Martin, a very controversial figure, could he say for certain, I know I can carry out my functions, I know I can carry out my duties, knowing that I have the support and knowing that I can trust my colleagues?
Well,
it seems as though Ulea with Christopher couldn't.
Let's actually go there, because I actually initially thought DCP Benjamin deflecting to Martin could have been him in subtly stating, hey, my job is not to cover for you. You started this mess. You need to answer for it. I'm not answering for you. Right? I don't want any part of this. I have a whole SOE to run. Let's not forget that the Commissioner of Police, who's supposed to have certain powers invested in that office during the SOE, right now, as you rightfully asked, there is no commissioner right now because Ayla's been suspended. And this is what the Police Service Commissioner said. It is not a disciplinary. She's not been disciplined in any way. She's just been told not to report for duty because of an ongoing investigation, of which Ayla's representative, Pamela Elder, senior counselor, said there is no evidence. And there's even questions, I have heard of questions with regards to if proper procedure was done when she was initially arrested in the first place, given the lack of evidence, right, with regards to how they were able to detain her and question her. So DCP Benjamin, I think he is trying not to even be a part of this whole fiasco as much as he can, but unfortunately, I don't think he could get away from it because regardless of his level of culpability, whether it's 0 or somewhere between 0 and 100, but he's part of the executive, unfortunately, during this time period. But I don't know, Keaton, if you saw some of what, well, first of all, well, okay, no. Let's go to, you brought up DCP Benjamin, if he could trust his peers. There have been officers who have already spoken to the press who are basically saying that they are not liking what they are seeing. A lot of people see it as political character assassination. This is one police officer speaking on anonymity. There's a lot of doubts over the motive of the arrest and the officers involved in the arrest. There are officers who are involved in this who feel like they are a law unto themselves. That's another officer. This is from a fraud squad officer, right? Now, a homicide bureau officer saying everyone on the ground is peeved. We're embarrassed and disappointed, especially in the process used by the police officers who arrested her, right? I won't say the morale of the homicide bureau is affected because we still continue to do our work, but for the first time, the public is seeing how leaders treat their own, so there is mistrust. And I think just about every police officer who understands the basics of how these things goes, given what has been said to the public, from what I understand, Keaton, have questions with the process and how the commissioner of police was arrested by her subordinates.
What I can't, I'm looking at another individual who commented on this, and it's retired ASP Sheridan Hill. And he says that earlier with Christopher, the arrest can negatively affect the public's perception of the TTPS. He feels the officers involved acted professionally and with no ill will in mind. And to quote from him from one newspaper report, he says, while it reflects poorly on the service, you have officers that have what it takes to conduct an investigation. Of course, they should be acting on advice because it's a public official, but I think those officers involved should get gold medals, in my opinion.
I can't agree with that. No offense.
I can't understand the logic.
No offense to Mr. Hill.
I can't understand his logic. What gold medals for what exactly? You've brought this service and the trust and the accountability, it reflects negatively on the service. I don't know, I don't understand, because I think he's a former part of the Professional Standards Bureau. So if that is the case, that says a lot about what the Professional Standards Bureau, or where they are, where they were.
Well, you have to ask if Susan Martin was his former boss.
You know, and what he's saying, he says he doesn't feel that the officers acted with ill will in mind. How are you in a position to state that?
Yeah.
Or how are you in a position to make that comment? You see, the biggest thing here is that the individual who carried out the arrest is in charge of intelligence and investigations. Is in charge of intelligence and investigations. So to say that you have officers that have what it takes to conduct an investigation, surely there are officers within the TTPS who have that. Not all officers are bad, but the individual who is in charge of the TTPS's Bureau of Investigations and Intelligence Gathering, It has made a mess. And this is what I'm saying. It's always intriguing to me, the individuals who need to be present at the time, the individuals who are the most important heads to be addressing the public and public concerns. It was like with the Prime Minister and the state of emergency at the beginning. It's not like Suzette Martin. She should have been there yesterday, but again, she probably can't face the heat and the fire because there are a lot of question marks already surrounding the individual, and now there are questions surrounding their operations. And it's I'm not attacking in any way, and I hope it's not interpreted as attacking. I'm simply wondering exactly how it is, how we could even get to this point.
Well, to counteract,
But then and again, it's Trinidad and Tobago. Why should I be surprised?
to counteract ASP Hill's gold medal statement, former Commissioner Stephen Williams basically said, what happened here, this is a quote, it's really unprofessional. It's unprofessional, it's unprecedented, it's ugly, this was done messy, right? When you're doing things, you don't just act, you think about the consequences of your actions before you act, right? And I think basically what he was saying was, when you're dealing, this is another quote, if you have to deal with a person like a commissioner, deputy commissioner, assistant commissioner in the organization, you will not detain that person for days. The point at which you will arrest that person is the point where you have satisfied yourself, you have sufficient evidence, compelling evidence to prosecute that person for the offense. Meanwhile, the DPP on Saturday said, release her, and currently apparently is waiting on the police to update him on what do they have, if they have anything at all. The implication is that they have absolutely nothing, at least as of right now, as based on the reports. So he's saying, have your ducks in a row before you undertake an exercise like arresting the commissioner of police, the head of the police service. And it seems as though, based on what we've seen, they don't have that, and they've caused a messy situation that the Police Service Commission is not necessarily helping with regards to the suspension. I get it that it's unprecedented, but Keaton, apparently the last time the Police Service Commission, and this might have been the outgoing Service Commission, assessed Ayla, they gave her top marks for integrity. So I would just like to know, what is the leg to stand on for the Police Service Commission suspending her? And Keaton, am I wrong? I said this yesterday. Are you not anticipating the massive lawsuit that is going to come out of this? Because she has
Of course.
You said I have integrity.
Christopher was released. Pamela Elder was answering questions on behalf of her clients. And that's the first thing that went through my mind. I said, how much is this going to cost us? How much as taxpayers is this going to cost us now? Because if at 2 p.m., you see, even if at 2 p.m. today, the letter from the Police Service Commission is not rescinded, sorry. Early Edward Christopher can still sue for corrupt assassination. I'm no attorney at law, but that is what I'm getting, because they're saying that the investigation is ongoing. She has been released without any evidence. Does that mean that they're going to now look for evidence? You know, so it's this, obviously, for an individual who's been in the service for many years, again, not a fan of the Commissioner of Police, but right is right and wrong is wrong. And that is what we have to start understanding. That's what we have to start realizing. Right is right, wrong is wrong. And in Trinidad, we get confused because we are so blinded by politics. We are so blinded by instability. And I understand the frustrations involved. But, you know, I wouldn't want this happening to myself. Why would I want it happening to anybody else? It's incredible what has transpired within the last 6 days. It's absolutely incredible. So Sean, it's one of the very first things I thought to myself. I said, how much is it going to cost us now as taxpayers at the end of the day? You know, given other stories or instances in the past, the amount of money potentially that could be involved in a defamation lawsuit, whatever the case may be, it's you know, it's so much. Camille Robinson Regis has confirmed that the House of Representatives is going to debate the Commissioner of Police situation today. Again, we're in a state of emergency. We do need someone leading the TTPS, and this is what you have Deputy Commissioner of Police for, and this is what you have an Assistant Commissioner of Police for. I am simply stating that maybe, just maybe, people involved in this situation need to take some time to digest exactly what has happened, because this honestly is making us look like a laughing stock.
Professor Diosran is saying that we need to restructure how the Police Service Commission needs to do its business. But Guy Griffith went further, and there was another person that I think echoed similar sentiments. But I can't find that article, so I'll stick with just Mr. Griffith. He said, look, we need to remove the Police Professional Standards Bureau. He is saying it's a division of, well, he claimed that it's a platform for officers trying to bust the throats of senior officers to try to get their job. He's quoted of saying that, and he's quoted of also saying, look, these things happen in the police service. It was happening to McDonald Jacob. He thinks this is more common probably than we are thinking. There's a relatively long article of him saying that. This has been going on for the last few years in the TTPS. The object now seems to be whoever's the king or queen, your role is to try to take down that person, and your reward is to get the crown. And it's interesting that he said to remove the Professional Standards Bureau because a certain person involved in this matter, at least at one point in time recently, was in charge of the Professional Standards Bureau, right? So I don't know if he is wanting us to make that connection, implying that connection, or if that connection is unintended. But it's very hard not to think that personal ambitions in these situations cause them to rush into something that they don't seem to be prepared for. And that's what I can't get over. How do you pull the trigger on something like this, not being prepared for it? So, Keaton, I have to ask, moving forward, do you think that Erla should be allowed to retain as Commissioner of Police? All things considered, there's a part of me that wonders if it's on a practical level, if it's just not feasible anymore because of how far this has gone, and she has all rights to sue us because of how this went down. But this thing is in such a mess. Where do we move forward from here? And more importantly, should this whole thing then be investigated further? And I'm not saying Erla and Best and the SSA and the sniper rifles. I'm saying the investigation itself and the officers involved, they potentially need to be investigated with regards to how they conducted themselves. Not so because the population should have questions about it. Not saying we assume them to be guilty, and investigation could clear them if nothing wrong happened. So we'll have to wait and see, right? I don't necessarily expect that to happen because the government is in a hard position now in this debate. The government, and to some extent the UNC, have painted themselves into a corner. The government now is trying to say we'll trust the process, but they've backed Erla up until now. Meanwhile, the opposition have gone against Erla up until now. But removing Erla, ironically, seemingly is a function of the dysfunction in how the police service is managed and the oversight of the Police Service Commission, potentially.
If Ola Airwood Christopher was charged, I very much understand that she should not be in that position, and I would agree that she should not be in that position. The mere fact that she was arrested for questioning, and I keep asking stressing on that point, was she informed that she was a suspect? Was she asked to come in for questioning? And that's the thing. You can ask somebody to come in for questioning. They can have their attorneys at law present, but they don't not necessarily arrested or charged. It's the same thing that happened with the firearms dealer, who was a person of interest as well. Mr. Lucadi, he walked in with his lawyer. He shared information, and that's it. He cooperated with the investigation. In this particular instance, Ulaywood Christopher, again, was not charged. There was no evidence. If she was, I very much understand her not being in that position, not being in that role. But because of what has transpired, the right thing to do is to allow her to return to office. I mean, her tenure comes to an end in 2 months anyway. Let her see it out. You see, the thing is, it's put such a stain on our reputation, and it's put a stain on the office of the Commissioner of Police, and by extension, the TTPS as a whole. But if other people can act in office while being investigated, then I don't see why Earl Wood Christopher cannot continue to do the same character functions, her duties, and her responsibilities. I think it's again, it's not that I'm saying that she's a good commissioner of police. I'm just saying right is right and wrong is wrong, and um, it's not justified being suspended at this time because I'm trying to figure out if there was no evidence, if the DPP didn't get involved, if the individual who arrested her refused to sign off as being the complainant, that alone says a lot. So yes, she should retain to office in my opinion. If the investigation continues and evidence arises, then I understand her being removed from office. Then I understand um, you know, the role of the courts come into play. But at this time, from what we have at hand, uh, innocent until proven guilty, I'm sorry, I think it's unjustified and quite unfair that this has happened. And you're right, the government finds themselves in a complete and utter mess. And I say the government because even though the TTPS is supposed to be an independent institution, and the Police Service Commission is supposed to be an independent institution, I think that there are question marks surrounding that. And I certainly think that there is a lack of trust in respect to that level of independence that should exist. And given the whole fiasco previously that transpired, we don't have to go into it. It doesn't necessarily all go well. I think given that we are in a state of emergency, we certainly have become a bit of a laughing stock. If I was outside looking in and seeing what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago, I'd be laughing, to be honest with you. I'd be wondering what is really going on. How could this be happening? They're in a complete and utter mess. They have to sort themselves out because we call out what we strive to be leaders in CARICOM. We strive to be leaders. We strive to lead in this and lead in that and whatnot. Really? Anyway, Sean. We have until 2 p.m. today to see what happens.
I mean, so it goes back to the whole meritless situation where this whole thing, it just seems as though this is just one of those things that the government has mismanaged from, I wouldn't say from the start, but at least from that point. And again, if we can't criticize the meritless situation and not criticize the situation because the process of how they're dealing with it. It doesn't matter if Ayla is unpopular, because this is a big 180 that the government is making. If it is that they want to, and I don't think this is the case, but if it is that they wanted her to be removed, you can't do it in such an unjustifiable manner. You just can't. But Keaton, I have one last question for you. Suzette Martin, and it's ironic, I don't know if it's necessarily ironic, but it's interesting how it's based around this whole FUL situation, which started again with the meritless, with whatever accusations that were implied with regards to then Commissioner Griffith. Suzette Martin was the officer that went to Barbados on a CARICOM plane. We don't know who authorized that excursion. She can do it of her own accord. We have no explanation except for the fact that Barbados has basically conceded and I believe has paid out Mr. Thomas some amount of money because they didn't even bother to fight the case. That's what their Attorney General said. Meanwhile, we have conceded at least part of that matter, and I don't know how further it's going to go locally, right? But she has that I would say we don't have a reasonable answer for with regards to what exactly happened there and why did it happen. Now we have this, where the arrest of Elia Christopher, then Commissioner of Police, is potentially mishandled. To what extent should the public look at this and saying, she better not be made Commissioner of Police? Because we have way too many questions.
I think last week I said it before this entire fiasco unfolded. When I say the entire fiasco, I'm talking about when Elia Christopher was arrested. I said it. Before she was released, before, no charges were laid and all that. I do not know the individual personally, So I cannot speak I cannot speak fully to their leadership qualities, and I do not want to be unfair to them, and I do not want to in any way sort of negatively impact any potential promotion. However, I will state that I do not, and this is my opinion, and I don't know if others share it, I would not feel very confident in having Suzette Martin as the substantive commissioner of police. I think because of the controversy surrounding the individual before they've even entered such a position, I think there's a lot of baggage, a lot of question marks, and maybe it was not on their own directive, maybe they were following orders, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. Because it transpired and because they were the fourth person, the person that carried all the actions, and you used one example, I think there are at least two or three. I would not feel confident in that. I would be more concerned and a bit more worried if such an individual were to actually become the substantive commissioner of police.
Well, we have to wait and see. At least right now, it is reported that Junior Benjamin, he is at the top of the merit list, and I do think that there will be a bit more confidence in him.
No. It's going to be Junior Benjamin. It's even on the standing orders for the House of Representatives today.
Yeah, especially since it seems as though he has been leading the police service in the state of emergency, right? Before all of this happened, which is one of the practical reasons that I said it doesn't make it justifiable, but there may be practical reasons why it's okay for Erla not to be commissioner of police. But unfortunately, to some extent, we are still governed by laws, and if we are willing to, well, I guess not maintain law and order, and maybe that's what this is, why are we surprised when society has such a crime problem? Unfortunately. I actually am very interested to see what Pamela Elder is going to do moving forward. Not that I want us to lose a massive lawsuit where millions of dollars go out the door and we get an embarrassing result, because at least CARICOM is looking at this. Make no mistake, we don't know to what extent the rest of the world is, but we'll have to wait and see how far that goes. We'll take a break right now. When we come back, we open the phone line. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN, the Content Capital. We'll be right back after this.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
And we're back here on talking about WESN, the content capital. Sean Michael Small alongside virtually with the Shah of WSN, Mr. Keaton Shah. And now is the time we open up the phone lines. You want to hear from you, the viewer. You can call in and have your say. Now, please, when you do call in, mute your television. Don't try to follow the show while talking to us over the phone. And, of course, we have our first caller for the morning, Mr. Digger Martin. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Small and Mr. Shah. First, let me
Good morning.
The journalistic skills I'm seeing with reporters now, with that presser with the police service, the executive of the police. I think it was fantastic questioning, and I think Akash has basically set the benchmark to be very, very thorough in questioning. One of the first questions I have to ask with all of this confusion is the sniper rifle a prohibited weapon. I believe Superintendent Arun said no yesterday. So to me, the question is answered. Now, there is a philosophy, and I'm going to use it, one shot, one kill. But there's a broader philosophy for that. One-shot decision. One-shot decision meaning that when you do it right the first time. And I think the DCP, I is failing with respect for this investigative process. You're going after the hierarchy of the police service. So if you have an issue, you have to take it out in your first try. You went to the DPP and the DPP say, hey, after a whole year, is that what you have? And you would tell to go back. To go back what to what now? A fishing expedition to get some evidence to charge or to continue. That has been the failing protocol of the police service for the longest while, and that is addressed with respect to the manpower audit, with respect to personnel, with respect to who we are to bring in the division of a particular caliber to get this right. But more importantly, KCR, our Prime Minister, said he got intelligence to call this SOC from the TTPS. Who in the TTPS gave him that intelligence to call the SOE? Was it ERLA or was it this DCP intelligence and investigation? It was that person that given up. I would like ERLA to tell us that now, because if it's not ERLA, then it tells me it's a broader conspiracy and was the SOE called to root out of office. Because when the SOE and all the regulations, all you have to have is a sense that something is going wrong, and you can arrest somebody and hope that you can get it to the tribunal and you can keep them for 4 or 5 days. And I believe I argue my case there. I'll go and have a nice day.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
We do have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air. Caller, morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Let me first start, Sean, when you about that. Let me two comments. But the first one is about the purchase of fuel oil from Petrojam by Paria. Let me see. Let me correct you on a couple of things.
Okay.
Petrojam, that sale, in terms of the pricing, I was surprised at the price. Because it is, let me just say this, it is a damn good price that Carrier was able to negotiate that fuel for. Very, very good price. Now, let me say in Trinidad and Tobago, that now the 17 million that the minister referred to, that is the amount of fuel Carrier imports every year. We import 17 million barrels of fuel.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
Combination, gasoline, fuel oil, gas oil, that type of thing. Now, in Trinidad and Tobago, even when we had the refinery, there is no, the only avenue we have for sale of fuel oil in Trinidad and Tobago is the cargo boat to Tobago. What's the name of it again? That
Cargo Star?
Yeah, the cargo star. There is nothing else in the country that uses fuel oil. So Petrochin used to sell as a bunker business all their fuel oil. As they would mix it with diesel as a what they call intermediate fuel to sell it to the ships coming through, passing through here. Because we are Trinidad and Tobago is an established bunker port. So it's bunker business. Now let me see you alluded to why it is that that what do you call it, Petrojam got involved in this sale. Let me say this. Despite the size of Jamaica and the traffic that passes through Jamaica, because Jamaica, the port of Jamaica is one of the biggest transshipment, but is the biggest transshipment port in the CARICOM. Because of their proximity to the United States of America, there is not much fuel sales going on in Jamaica for international bunkering. So that is why there is an excess, there is always an excess of fuel oil there that is for sale. Hence the reason why I think the price was, the negotiated price was so great. Now we take care of that. Let me go to this issue with with Christopher and well that debacle. Firstly, remember on Friday I said to you, Sean, I said there was no issue based on my reading of the Firearms Act and the SSA Act. There was I saw no issue in the director of the SSA trying to procure these firearms, and the Commissioner of Police approving it. There was no issue there. Now, have you all read the 19-page, the 19-paragraph letter that her attorney sent, Mrs. Christopher's attorney sent to the Police Service Commission?
I've seen it. I have not read it through.
That is what you all need to read to understand what is happening here. And the questions that has been asked by the attorney. One of the things that stood out to me is that she said in that letter to the Police Service Commission that Ms. Harewood Christopher on the 27th of November 2024, Mrs. Christopher was informed by Suzette Martin of an investigation into those rifles. But she was not told by Mrs. Martin that she was the subject of the investigation. And so she knew nothing about the investigation. And that is a telling sign. Now, I said to you on Friday, Sean, the same people that are involved in Mrs. Covering for Mrs. Martin when she went to Miss Martin and she went to Barbados to bring back Brent Thomas, is the same people involved in this thing with Miss Christopher. Eh? Because at that time when she did that, Miss Martin should have been suspended from the police service for that action. She should have been. And it was not done. The same puppet masters that are involved in this are involved in that, are involved in this. I'll tell you, as I told you all before on Friday, Sean, a lot I could say about these issues that I would not say, and things are going to come out. However, this was a palace coup. The details to which for the planning and the reasons for it yet to be revealed. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller. I have things where that will cause me to agree with you 100%, but I'm not too sure if I could say it. They're unsubstantiated. We do have St. Augustine line, Keaton, so we'll take the call now. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Yes.
Morning, caller. Go ahead. You on the air?
Yeah, well, it's just to follow on what the last caller was saying, because I know, I'm aware, and I see It's a letter written by the Christopher.
Pamela Eller, yes.
Yes, Pamela shares, and she wrote and said it's a pre-action protocol letter. And she says if the Service Commission does not withdraw that direction, they are going for judicial review. That's it. That's it. There's a letter from Pamela Elder saying, if you don't withdraw that, and that is to the Service Commission now, this is a pre-action protocol letter, and we are going to be going for judicial review. That's the position. As we stand.
Yeah. Thank you, Kola. Thank you. Sean, you should read that letter.
I'm not finding.
I
the
received
part
it
about.
yesterday, and I went through it.
Yeah.
Yes,
there it is.
This is where I was asking this morning, as per whether or not she was ever informed. We know that this is what Pamela stated in her letter, but the reason why that was important is because it shows that the Commissioner of Police, at least from what we've been told at this point, never interfered in the investigation, and that's why I wonder, was she ever asked to come in for questioning? Was she ever asked to come in, to answer certain questions? And no. So you are the subject of an investigation and you're not even aware of that. And this is why I said this individual in Suzette Martin, a very, very questionable character. And I mean, Mr. San Fernando pointed it out. She should have been suspended following that Brent Thomas matter.
Yep.
Wasn't she actually promoted?
Yep.
To Deputy Commissioner of Police after. So it's... I told you, it's a laughing story. It's scary, I really can't help but laugh because it's comical and silly and stupid to say the least what's happening. But it's absolutely scary as well. It's very, very scary. And when you're trying to fight a crime situation that's plaguing Trinidad and Tobago, the people who are supposed to be protecting us and saving us and helping the situation and ensuring that law and order is abided to, implementing and enforcing law and order. They themselves seem to have some very unfavorable and, need I say, unlawful conduct. But who is policing the executive of the police? The Police Service Commission? I'm confused by their actions. I just said, we can go back to last week's Friday show when I said the Police Service Commission needs to act, but they don't have any evidence to. There's no grounds. She's being investigated, right? Is she is she still being investigated? Is Edward Christopher still being investigated? No, to my knowledge, I don't know. It's an ongoing investigation. Is Edward Christopher still being investigated as a suspect in this case?
The implications.
As I said, 2 p.m. today.
The implications of the fact that she was aware of the case but did not interfere with the investigation. It was reported that the documentations about that FUL went missing. Here's the thing. To what extent was it just another form put on a desk? And to what extent was other people who may have had access to that documentation potentially culpable for making that documentation, to quote the Attorney General, disappear? We have San Fernando, I believe, back on the line. Good morning, caller, you on the air?
Two things quickly, Sean.
Yeah.
The issue of the allegation, the documents, the FUL, for that thing went missing. If it is that they didn't have copies of the documents, they were presented with copies of the document by Dukadid, but by Dukadid's attorney.
Okay.
And I'm saying that categorically.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I just wanted a correction. One of the previous callers talked about the reporter that actually did a very good job in pressing Junior Benjamin in that press conference yesterday. And actually, the reporter was Keisha Haynes, not Akash Amaro. And I think sometimes these things have to be corrected. But it was Keisha Haynes.
Yes. Thank you,
I think the caller, the first caller from Digger Martin said that Akash has set the standards.
Yes.
I don't think he meant it was the person questioning Junior Benjamin yesterday. But I did state early in the conversation it was Keyshawn Haynes who really led the question yesterday. And Keyshawn, when Junior Benjamin said, I really appreciate your questioning. Keyshawn Haynes responded, I don't appreciate the lack of responses. He stood his ground, and well done to him.
I think this goes back to journalists now. Maybe this was not necessary years ago, like 4 years ago, 3 years ago. But I think given the current environment now, where essentially things like press conferences and questions by journalists get routinely deflected, and you get the spin, you get the runaround, you get indirect answers, you get answers that have nothing to do with the question asked, but to try to deflect to some other topic. I think reporters are now learning, at least the ones brave enough to stand their ground and to be more assertive in order to push past these sorts of deflections. And if the public speaker looks bad, it's on them. It's not that the reporter's trying to make them look bad, because you're quite right to point that out. Junior Benjamin, that's your fault for getting that response, not Keyshawn for responding to you in that way. He doesn't owe you anything given the fact that he is doing his job. And public speaking as a member of the executive and being transparent, at least to a reasonable degree, ethically, is your job, DCP Benjamin, as it is for any politician or any public servant with a similar level of responsibility. So it just, with regards to the gun dealer having the documentation, the point is not having the documents. The point is the fact that why did they go missing? Regardless of how ineffectual or effectual it going missing was, that in and of itself, and it goes back to why I said this whole thing probably should be investigated, because it's unprecedented. If you're going to bungle the arrest of a sitting commissioner of police during a state of emergency, Keaton, am I wrong for thinking this is not one of those things that, like with the Nipon Coolman missing file, even though that and all we shouldn't accept? But look, the Brent Thomas thing was allowed to kind of just wither into the ether. That $20 million lawsuit and the lack of a defense by the state was allowed to just wither into the ether. Like, at some point, shouldn't we be asking, hey, we need proper resolutions for these things. How are we supposed to trust you when you just let these inconvenient things, just be unresolved and quietly fade into the night? We still have unanswered questions over all of these matters. Am I wrong for saying that?
I'll put it this way. As I said, the individual who's supposed to be answering the majority of these questions, it's going to be deflected. It's always going to come back to it's an ongoing investigation, and I cannot comment on an ongoing investigation for legal purposes. But the individual who has a lot of questions to answer was not present yesterday at the TTPS media briefing. But as I said, if this morning the confidence in the TTPS is 0% or 1%, bring back Earl, go update, and at least that's an improvement from 0-1%, right? Increase trust and confidence in TTPS by 7%.
I'm interested in what the opposition is going to say at the debate today, to be honest. I don't know if their stance of Earl must go is going to be the most effective thing, to just stick with that. I'm hoping for it to be a little bit more varied and detailed.
The opposition are probably going to use that position based off of Ula Edwards' 10 years Commissioner of Police and the level of crime and criminality we experience in Trinidad and Tobago. And as I said, I'm no fan of her.
Yeah, but that's a lazy position.
I can't defend her record as Commissioner of Police. But on this particular issue, you're right. I'd love to hear what the opposition is going to state, because, they have, quite a number of lawyers on their bench that I would love to hear their opinions on this particular thing. So let's see.
Last thing, Keaton, it's actually kind of funny. Mr. San Fernando brought it up, but it hasn't necessarily been pushed into the forefront. The administration seemingly is doing everything it can to be seen as not being involved in this. To what extent do you think that the country is willing to accept that and willing to accept this situation overall?
How is it that all of a sudden the business of the TTPS is not the business of the government? when it came, and I'm sorry, I have to, when it came to Gary Griffith and the entire fiasco, the Prime Minister acted in the best interest of the country and in the best interest of the government.
What did
He
he
got
say?
involved. Now, all of a sudden,
Keaton, what was
the
his
business of the
justification?
TTPS is not the business of the government.
Keaton, what was his justification at the time? Did he not say repeatedly, I am the head of the National Security Council, so I could get involved?
Exactly. So I don't understand. Yes, I hope people remember these things.
Now,
how convenient it is. How convenient it is. Dr. Keith Rowley is still Prime Minister. He may be on his way out. He may be in his last month. It does not matter. As it stands, he's still at the National Security Council. How, when it came to the Gary Griffith situation, he acted in the best interest of the country. It became a government matter, became a government issue ahead of National Security Council. Now all of a sudden they're not getting involved. It's not their business too. Boy, make it make sense now.
Now, here's the thing, Keaton. I am going with that line of thinking, not on the sense of I think they were involved with the arrest, but rather I could believe that they weren't involved in the arrest. I could believe that. Here's the thing. The fact that they're sitting on the sidelines, at least until this debate, and they're letting it kind of play out, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like that. At best, what you're trying to tell us is, we can't do anything, all of a sudden we can't do anything.
But I agree with you. I'm not saying that they were involved in the arrest. I have no evidence and I can't make that statement. But I'm saying that if you have a Minister of National Security who is sole responsibility is the TTPS, why am I not hearing from you? What about the Prime Minister who's head of the National Security Council? Why am I not hearing from you? What about the Minister of National Security, the substantive Minister? Why am I not hearing from you? This is what I'm saying. I agree with you 100%. They may not have been involved in the actual arrest. I don't know. I have no evidence. But the silence is deafening.
Well, Keaton, maybe they heard us when we speak about how the merit list went down and they told themselves, next time we can't get involved. And ironically, if that is true, this might be the time when it's appropriate to maybe push the boundaries a little bit in order to ensure that nothing bad happens, right? Maybe. Now, to what extent you could push those boundaries, right? I'm not entirely sure. I don't necessarily want them to break any laws and to circumvent any laws themselves. But, you know, maybe they are once bitten, twice shy. We're not going to do that again. We're not going to be seen as getting involved in things that we're not supposed to be seen as getting involved. And it might be unfortunate timing for them to have that realization. And to some extent, it might still be the right thing to do in principle. It's just inconsistent with their past. And that's why we have questions.
Son, we've got, what, at least 4 more hours. I haven't got any notifications as yet in respect to the Police Service Commission, but we've got 4.5 hours to see what transpires. So I think you're going to have more to speak about tomorrow.
I am very much, we got a new Police Service Commission and I had hope, and maybe that hope was misplaced, and I'm not liking how things are going already. So we have to wait and see on that as well, because we're supposed to have a new commissioner by, I think it's March, May this year.
You also have to recognize that the Police Service Commission are in a difficult position. I'm not disregarding that at all. I'm simply stating that they probably need to, you know, in order to act, you act on appropriate grounds. In order to act, you act when it is that you have sufficient reason to act. And following this is why the timing of the letter was so intriguing. Following what transpired with the release of Wheeler Air with Christopher, there is still time for the Police Service Commission to act. So who is is anybody advising the Police Service Commission, or are they acting on their own accord? What's transpiring there? As I said, they do find themselves in a difficult position, but at the same time, this is the reason why they accepted these positions, because they think that they have the knowledge and the competence to try and navigate through any of these challenges, and this is a major challenge. Let's see.
Well, consider,
maybe they just might surprise us.
Consider this, Keaton. If this was an internal coup or an attempt to do so in order to get the job of Commissioner of Police, as some people believe, both within the police service and without, right? The Police Service Commission effectively was used as a tool by them. Potentially, the Police Service Commission was played like a fiddle, and very well. I'm not saying that they were, But potentially that one could make the case because they rushed into decision. And now, if they try to reverse it now, only to have the investigation reveal something further on, they will look incompetent. So that and all could be a reason why they're stuck where they are after doing this on Saturday or whenever, or Sunday, whenever it is they did it. So I'm not going to lie, you're right. They are in a tough spot. Folks, remember your allegiance to the Republic. Stay safe. It's nice to be nice. Sharp WSN, close us out.
Well, with all the wonders and stresses, remember today is a good day to have a good day. Try and make it a good day. And we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a